When is the best time to make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The dhikr of Allah being one of the most acts of worship that is so virtue, to the extent of which that it's not limited to time or place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the believers to make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in abundance, frequently. This is not temporary, this is not concise to, or limited to time or place. Except, and this is the way the Prophet ﷺ, he would make remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every state that he was in, ﷺ, except when he would go to relieve himself. When we enter the bathroom, the Prophet ﷺ would abstain from making the physical dhikr with one's speech. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would finish and leave the bathroom, he would say, غفرانك. And غفرانك means forgiveness from you, O Allah. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And as the ulama, they say, because he abstained from the physical dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can we be in that state? Because it's really the life of the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for them. To establish this is by two things. The first one is to make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the specific times, in the specific places, in whatever state that we know from the Sunnah, from the way of the Prophet ﷺ, that he made dhikr. And that includes the obligatory acts of worship, one of which is the 5 daily salah. This is the most important dhikr in our life, to make our 5 obligatory salah every day, and this is a continuous one for the rest of one's life. And with the salah, there are attached dhikr to it. There is dhikr to be said in the salah itself, and there is dhikr to be said before or after the salah, according to the way the Prophet ﷺ. And these are acts of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, never to be missed, which is part of the certain times where the Prophet ﷺ would make dhikr, in the morning and in the evening. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Prophet ﷺ to make dhikr in the morning and in the evening in more than one verse in the Quran. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after he prays Salatul Fajr, and he would sit till the sun rises, as it's reported by Imam Muslim in his Sahih. And there are adhkar, many adhkar, authentic adhkar that the Prophet ﷺ would say in the morning and in the evening, something that we can refer to the authentic books of adhkar and learn it and how to say it and to say it, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentioning the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So certain times, the morning and the evening, between the salawat, after the salah, when a person leaves their home, there's a specific dhikr to be said. When a person enters the masjid, leaving the masjid, riding their transportations, and so on and so forth. Many different times where there is authentic narration from the Prophet ﷺ, things to be said. Also at specific occasions, for example, at specific places, before a person go to sleep, for example. So specific places, specific times, specific state that a person is in. So if we practice and we keep on working on ourselves to try our best not to miss these adhkar, and then you add to it the second type, which is at all times a person making remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. These types of adhkar, making istighfar, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah al-azim, wa atubu ilay, things of that nature, and reciting the Quran, of course, which is the best of all types of dhikr to make remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you see, the more the person does these matters on a daily basis, the more rewards he gets. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدومها وإن قل. The most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones that are done in a consistent manner, even if it's less. So to do the obligations, and then to make the adhkar that is reported from the Prophet ﷺ, and in general, to be among those who make remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in abundance, both males and females. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.